The call came at 2:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time because I had been lying awake anyway, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, listening to the rain hit the window in uneven bursts. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and when I saw the number street, Catherine's Medical Center, my stomach dropped before I even answered. Is this Maya Calloway? Yes, that's me. We're calling about your brother, Daniel Calloway. He was brought in about 40 minutes ago. There was an accident. I was already out of bed, already pulling on jeans with one hand, phone pressed between my ear and shoulder. What kind of accident? Is he okay? What happened? The voice on the other end was calm in that practiced way that told me nothing good. He's in surgery right now. We need you to come in. I drove 20 minutes in 12. The whole way, I told myself it was going to be fine. Daniel was 31 years old. He was healthy. He coached youth soccer on Saturday mornings and made his own coffee from scratch and called our mother every Sunday without being asked. Nothing was going to happen to my brother. I was wrong about a lot of things that night. The emergency entrance of Street Catherine's is lit up even at 3 in the morning, fluorescent and relentless. I pushed through the sliding doors and went straight to the front desk, gave my name, asked about Daniel. The woman behind the counter typed something, picked up a phone, spoke quietly. A nurse came out to meet me within a few minutes, a heavy-set woman with kind eyes and short gray hair, introducing herself as the charge nurse on duty. She walked me to a small waiting room off the main corridor. She told me Daniel had been in a car accident on Route 9, that his vehicle had gone off the road and hit a guardrail at high speed, that he was in surgery for internal bleeding and a fractured leg, that the surgeons were experienced and doing everything right. She said all the right things in the right order. I sat in a plastic chair and I nodded and I did not cry, because if I started I was not sure I would stop. What she could not tell me was why Daniel, who had driven that same stretch of road 100 times, who had never so much as gotten a speeding ticket, had suddenly lost control at 50 miles an hour on a dry night with no other vehicles involved. That question would take me 3 days and one very strange conversation with a hospital security guard to begin to answer. My brother had a business partner named Greg Sutton. They had built their landscaping company together over 6 years, starting with one truck and a trailer and working their way up to a 12-person operation with commercial contracts across the county. Daniel talked about Greg the way you talk about someone you trust, completely easy, automatic, without thinking to question it. Greg showed up at the hospital around 6 in the morning, 2 hours after I got there. I was sitting in the waiting room with a cup of bad vending machine coffee when he walked in, and my first thought was that it was decent of him to come so quickly. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw and very steady eyes. He hugged me and said all the right things. He asked about Daniel's condition and shook his head at the right moments and said he just could not believe it. He stayed for about 40 minutes and then said he had to go handle some things at the office, that he would keep the crew working so Daniel would not have to worry about anything while he recovered. I thanked him. He left. Daniel came out of surgery at 7:15. The surgeon told me the internal bleeding had been controlled, that the leg would heal, that he was going to need time, but that the prognosis was good. I finally cried then, in the hallway, with my back against the wall and my hands over my face. By the afternoon, Daniel was in a room on the 3rd floor. He was groggy from the anesthesia but conscious, and when I walked in and he saw me, he tried to smile and it came out lopsided and exhausted and so completely like him that my chest hurt. "You look terrible," he said. "You look worse," I said. I sat with him for hours. He drifted in and out of sleep. At some point around 4 in the afternoon he was more awake, and he asked me something that I did not understand at first. "Did anyone look at the car?" "What do you mean?" He shifted against the pillows, wincing. "The brakes, Maya. Something was wrong with the brakes." I hit the pedal on the downhill, and it went straight to the floor. Nothing. Like pressing air. I looked at him. "You think something was wrong with the car mechanically?" "I know something was wrong." His voice was low and careful. "I took that truck in for service 3 weeks ago. Everything checked out fine. And then last night on a road I drive all the time, the brakes just stopped working. I told him I would look into it. I told him to rest. I did not tell him that something about the way he said it, the flatness of it, the certainty had settled into my spine like a cold weight and stayed there. The next morning I came back to the hospital early. Daniel's room was on the 3rd floor, East Wing, room 314. I knew the layout by then: elevator, left, past the nurse's station, 2nd corridor. I had done it twice already. I was walking down the main corridor toward the elevator when a man stepped out of a doorway directly into my path. I almost ran into him. He was maybe 55, stocky, with a security badge clipped to his shirt, and the particular kind of stillness that people get when they have spent a long time watching things. "Sorry," I said, stepping around him. "Miss Calloway?" I stopped, turned. "Yes?" He was looking at me steadily. Not aggressive, not nervous. Just very still and very focused. "I need you to not go up there right now." "Excuse me?" He glanced down the corridor in both directions. Then he looked back at me and lowered his voice. "There's a man up on 3, been there since about a half hour ago. He's not a visitor, not a patient. He told the floor nurse he's family. But I know that man, and I need you to wait down here for a few minutes." My mouth was dry. "Who is he?" "Let me make a call first," he said. "Can you step in here?" He gestured toward the doorway. He had come out of a small staff break room, 2 tables, a coffee maker, a window looking out on the parking structure. I followed him in because something in the way he was standing told me he was not wrong about whatever he was worried about. He made a call. Brief, quiet. Then he turned back to me. "His name is Carl Merritt," he said. "He works for your brother's company. Or he did, until about 2 weeks ago." I had heard that name. Daniel had mentioned it, a driver they had let go, some kind of problem with equipment. I had not paid close attention at the time. "What does he want with my brother?" "The security guard, his badge," said Ray Dominguez. Was quiet for a moment. 3 years ago, he said, my nephew was in a situation. Workplace dispute, money went missing, someone got blamed who did not do it. Carl Merritt was involved. He does what people pay him to do. That's what he is. The cold weight in my spine spread outward. "Someone paid him," I said. It was not a question. Ray did not answer that directly. "I'm going to walk up there now and ask him to leave. Security grounds. I need you to stay here until I text you. Do not go up alone." He left. I stood in the break room with my hands wrapped around nothing and my mind moving very fast through a set of facts I did not want to line up the way they were lining up. Carl Merritt. Fired 2 weeks ago. Showing up in my brother's hospital room the morning after a brake failure that put Daniel in surgery. My phone buzzed 8 minutes later. "Clear. Come up. Room's got a nurse in it. Stay close to station." I went up. Daniel was awake, slightly agitated. A nurse was adjusting something on his IV line. Ray Dominguez was standing just outside the door, arms crossed, watching the corridor. I pulled him aside. "What did he say?" "Carl?" "Said he was a friend of the family, heard about the accident. When I told him visiting was restricted to immediate family only, he left without arguing. Men like that don't argue." He looked at me directly. "Miss Calloway, I'm going to be honest with you. What I think happened is not something I can prove. But I think you should be talking to somebody, not just about the man upstairs." "About the car," I said. He nodded once. Slowly. "I called the police that afternoon. A detective named Patricia Okafor came to the hospital and took a statement from me and from Daniel. She was thorough, and she did not dismiss anything we said, but she was also honest about what she could and could not do with what we had given her. A man claiming to be a family friend visiting a patient was not a crime. Brake failure could have any number of causes. She would look into it. She told us to document everything. She told Daniel to make a list of anyone who might have reason to want to harm him or to interfere with his business. She gave me her card. After she left, Daniel and I sat quietly for a while. The room was getting dark. Outside the window, the parking lot lights were coming on one by one. "Greg," Daniel said finally. I looked at him. 6 weeks ago, he said. I found out Greg had been siphoning money from the business account. Not a lot at first. Small amounts. But it went back 2 years, Maya. 2 years of small amounts adds up. He stopped, pressed his lips together. I confronted him. I told him I was going to bring in an accountant, that I was going to document everything before I decided what to do. I gave him a chance because we built that company together, and I thought it meant something. He thought you were going to go to the police, I said. Daniel nodded. I was still deciding, but he didn't know that. I thought about Greg at the hospital at 6 a.m, steady-eyed, saying all the right things, hugging me, asking about Daniel's condition. I thought about how easy it is to look concerned when you already know what happened. The next 72 hours were the hardest of my life in a different way than the surgery had been. The surgery was fear happening to me. This was me having to do something, having to move, having to be careful and calm and precise when everything in me wanted to put my fist through a wall. I started with what I could access. Daniel gave me limited authority to review the business accounts while he was hospitalized, a practical necessity he had been meaning to set up anyway, now suddenly urgent. I spent 12 hours going through 2 years of transaction records, cross-referencing what Daniel had already found, building a document that was clear and sequenced and undeniable. The transfers were careful. Greg was not stupid. Small amounts, usually routed through a vendor account that existed on paper but produced no actual services. A landscaping supply company with a vague name that dissolved after 18 months. But the pattern was there. Consistent timing. Consistent amounts. A total, over 26 months, of $114,000. I brought everything to Detective Okafor. She sat with the documents for a long time. Then she looked up at me and said, "This is good work." In the meantime, Ray Dominguez had done something I had not asked him to do and would not have thought to ask. He had gone back through the hospital's external security camera footage from the morning of Daniel's accident, not the night itself, but 3 days before, when Daniel's work truck had been parked in the hospital lot while Daniel attended a meeting with a commercial client nearby. The truck had sat in that lot for 4 hours. Carl Merritt's car appeared in the footage, 23 minutes in the same section of the lot, doors open for 9 of those minutes. Ray brought the footage to Detective Okafor directly. When the police pulled Daniel's truck from the impound lot and had a mechanic examine the brake line, they found exactly what they were looking for. A small, deliberate compromise to the rear brake line, the kind that would hold at low speeds and normal conditions, but fail under sustained pressure on a downgrade. The kind of thing that looks, at first glance, like a slow leak from wear and tear. It would not have looked like wear and tear to a forensic examiner. Greg Sutton was arrested on a Thursday morning. Carl Merritt was picked up the same afternoon at a motel 2 counties over. Detective Okafor called me while I was sitting in Daniel's hospital room watching him eat lunch, the first real meal he'd managed to finish, and I stepped into the hallway to take the call and stood there for a long time after she hung up, just breathing. When I went back in, Daniel looked at my face and set down his fork. "They got them," I said. He closed his eyes, let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere very deep. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet, and he looked out the window for a moment before he looked back at me. "You did that," he said. "Ray did half of it." "Who talked to Ray?" I sat down and did not say anything. The case took 8 months to work through the courts. I will not pretend it was clean or easy, or that justice arrived on a perfect schedule. It did not. There were delays and motions and moments where I sat in a courtroom hallway and thought about all the ways this could still go sideways. But the financial records were airtight. The forensic analysis of the brake line was airtight. The camera footage put Carl Merritt at the location of the tampered vehicle with documented precision. And Carl Merritt, faced with the specific and detailed weight of what the prosecution had assembled, made a decision that defendants sometimes make when they realize the math no longer works in their favor. He cooperated. Greg Sutton was convicted on charges of attempted murder, criminal conspiracy, and felony fraud. The judge sentenced him to 22 years, with the fraud charges adding a mandatory additional sentence that ran consecutively. He will not see the outside of a prison for a very long time. Carl Merritt received a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony, but reduced is relative. He is looking at 11 years minimum before any possibility of parole. The business was something else entirely. A company cannot run on a lie, and Sutton Callaway Landscaping. The name they had given it, when they were still 2 young guys with a truck and a handshake, had to be unwound legally before it could be rebuilt. Daniel spent 3 months after his discharge from the hospital working with a lawyer and an accountant to restructure, rename, and recapitalize. It was slow and exhausting, and there were days he called me just to have someone to be tired at. But the crew stayed. Almost all of them. The guys who had been with Daniel for years, who knew the difference between the 2 men at the top and had always known it. They stayed, and they kept working, and the spring contracts came back, and the summer contracts came back, and by the fall, my brother had a company that was smaller than before and entirely his. On a Sunday in October, almost exactly a year after the phone call that woke me at 2:47 the morning, Daniel and I walked through the park near our parents' old house. He had a slight limp, still probably always would, the surgeon had said, depending on how the bone finished settling. He did not seem bothered by it. He was the kind of person who took the thing that happened and then moved forward with it, not despite it. We sat on a bench by the pond and watched the geese, and did not talk for a while, which is something we have always been able to do. I keep thinking about what would have happened, Daniel said eventually, if you hadn't been awake. I was always going to answer the phone. I know, but I mean, he stopped. Started again. If you had just come straight upstairs that morning, if Ray hadn't been in that hallway. I thought about that, the specific geometry of it. A security guard stepping out of a break room at exactly the right moment. Knowing a name from 3 years ago. Deciding it mattered enough to stop a stranger in a corridor and say, wait. He told me afterward why he did it, I said. Not just because of his nephew. He said he spent 30 years watching people walk past things they could see but didn't want to stop for. He said he got tired of being one of those people. Daniel nodded slowly. Then he looked out at the water. Call him sometime, he said. Thank him again. I already sent him something. Send him something else. We walked back through the park as the light was going amber and long across the grass. Daniel's limp was more noticeable when he was tired, and he was tired, but he kept a steady pace and I kept mine beside him. There is a thing you learn when someone you love has been in real danger, not movie danger. Not the danger of uncertainty or misfortune, but the specific and chosen danger of someone deciding their interests matter more than your person's life. You learn that the distance between safety and not safety is very small and very fragile, and maintained mostly by the decency of individuals who decide, in small and often unwitnessed moments, to do the right thing. A security guard steps into a hallway. A forensic examiner notices something a casual eye would miss. A woman drives 20 minutes in 12 and sits in a plastic chair and does not let herself stop asking questions. My brother walked beside me through the park, and the geese argued on the water, and somewhere across town a truck with his company's new name on the side was finishing up a job, and I thought that fragile is not the same as broken, and that some things hold,